Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Sunday, February 18th. This is day 135 since the October 7th attacks. Please keep in thought and prayer today all who are on spiritual pilgrimages, including the Gaza ceasefire pilgrimages happening around the world. There's one nearby where I'm located here in Washington, D.C. that left on Ash Wednesday from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. called Pilgrimage for Peace. That group is scheduled to arrive in Washington, D.C. this Wednesday. Normally on Sundays, I try to share a short message, a devotion, something that might encourage our spirits. And today I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about heroes of the faith, not to adulate them at heroes, but just to talk about some of the principles of peace building. And these are some leaders who have inspired me personally, who I feel like break through barriers and weaknesses of the human spirit. And they love triumphantly. And so today I actually read this book this morning. It's a book about Brother Andrew. I don't know if you know this series. It's a youth series. And you might be familiar with the Ministry of Open Doors International. I had the opportunity to meet Brother Andrew in 2010 at the first Christ at the Checkpoint conference at Bethlehem Bible College. I was living in Jerusalem at the time, and I was inspired by his story. This man who grew up Dutch in the Netherlands, he spent several formative years of his early life under the Nazi regime. And he had kind of his childhood and his young adulthood was not deeply religious, but he went to serve in the military and to fight in war in the East Dutch Indies. And it was there that he had this conversion experience of sorts. He was overcome with guilt because of his role in killing not only combatants, but civilians. And he talked about finding Christ and the forgiveness that he knew through the person of Jesus. And he dedicated his life to sharing messages of peace and the good news of the gospel and good news with the nations. And so he's known by many as God's smuggler. He'd taken Bibles into Eastern Europe during the communist era. But a little known part of his history is his role and engagement and his profound beliefs and contributions to the Middle East and his relationship with Arab Christians. So Jack Serra, who is now the president of Bethlehem Bible College, at a time when he served as the general coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa and their Evangelical Alliance, he said this about Brother Andrew. He said he had a soft heart for those in pain, the persecuted, and those usually considered on the other side, the enemy. And he was willing to step into a difficult place and talk with difficult people, but never compromise the message of the gospel. Brother Andrew passed away in fall of 2023. And when he did so, President Biden's ambassador for religious freedom, Rashad Hussain, who we just met with last week, Rashad Hussain is a Muslim, Ambassador Hussain. He said this about Brother Andrew. He said, he advocated tirelessly for religious freedom, a source of hope to persecuted Christians around the world. He said, I'm grateful that his legacy will live on in the work of Open Doors. But I wanted to share with you a few stories that I think highlight the ways he sought to break down barriers and express messages of hope, acceptance, mercy, and grace, fundamental principles that I think are critical as we seek to pursue peace, messages of love, acceptance, mercy, and grace. In 1992, there were 400 militants from Hamas. They were expelled by Israel to the side of a mountain in southern Lebanon called Marj al-Zahor. And when these 415 militants from Hamas, this is 1992, when they were dispelled, Brother Andrew saw an opportunity to practice the scriptures in Matthew chapter 25 talk about whatever you do unto the least of these, you do unto me. And so Brother Andrew actually met with these leaders of Hamas and he delivered tents, food, and medicine. And this to me is an example of what we read in Proverbs chapter 25, verses 21 to 23, that say, if your enemy is hungry, give them food to eat. If he is thirsty, give them water to drink. In doing this, you will keep burning coals on his head and the Lord will reward you. And I don't know that we want anyone to have burning coals on their head, but I think the idea is the commandments that we read about in the scriptures of love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself, and love your enemy, that Brother Andrew sought to live that out. His beliefs were so radical, according to Christianity Today, that his activism rattled Christians, believers, Western supporters, some of whom were fundamentalists. And Brother Andrew was frequently critical of U.S. evangelical support for American wars in the Middle East. He was critical of the Afghani war, the war in Afghanistan, and the war that the U.S. had in Iraq, seeking because he felt that it was a lack of faith in the ability to be able to negotiate peace. He advocated for refugees. He actually prayed for Osama bin Laden. He called when Osama bin Laden was killed, he called his killing a murder. And Christianity Today said this at his death, that he also condemned the assassinations of his friends in Gaza. In 2024, the Israeli military killed Sheikh Ahmed Hassan, who was the founder of Hamas. 7 years before, he had welcomed Brother Andrew into his home. And it was only this gospel of love that Brother Andrew consistently preached that Brother Andrew believed that it was only the gospel of love that could answer the stalemate of the Middle East conflict. And I thought, just as I was reading this morning, that we might not agree with some of the political dynamics, we might not agree with the methodology of his evangelism. Some of us may very well, but that this idea of the gospel of love answering the stalemate of the Middle East, we are not seeing that right now in the news, and we're not seeing that practiced. And so there was this picture of Brother Andrew with Yasser Arafat, and Brother Andrew actually got Arafat's permission to open the Bible bookshop in Gaza. I didn't know that he was the one that did that. And so Christianity's very presence in Gaza, which right now is under threat, in large part was encouraged by the ministries of Brother Andrew. And so that idea has just been percolating in my mind. It is only the gospel of love that can answer the stalemate of the Middle East conflict. And so my prayer and hope is we might follow Brother Andrew's example in that regard, and the example of so many others who are compelled and motivated by love and not hatred. Earlier this week, I had promised to tell a little bit of the story of Yonatan Zagin. He's the son of the Israeli peace activist Vivian Silver, who wrote an op-ed recently on February 11th in Haaretz. The op-ed was called, "We Find It Easy to Accept War, but Peace Not So Much." And I wanted to just read a little bit of Yonatan's op-ed. He said this: "My mother, Vivian Silver, was slaughtered in her house on October 7th. She always has had a clear anti-war moral stance, but she was also pragmatic, saying that peace is an Israeli interest and that we will never be safe without it. Ever since her voice fell silent, I am overwhelmed by pain. Standing before a mirror that measures 365 square kilometers, if you don't include the West Bank. As an individual, what is reflected back to me is pain and hopelessness. As a people, what is reflected to us are big ideas and empty phrases. We have a national goal. They only understand force. They never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. There's no one to talk to. These are the things that come back to us and repeat in an endless loop. But the Zionist project is an impressive enterprise that was intended to provide an answer to the genuinely existential Jewish question. At the same time, its aim has always been to turn an area inhabited by one ethnic group into the nation state of another ethnic group. And with this understanding, it was Ze'ev Jabotinsky who expressed this iron wall idea, meaning that when the Jews firmly assert their existence, their military existence in the area, the Arabs will accept the Jewish state as fact and not passing the phenomenon until the iron wall is firmly established, we can expect ongoing war. And one has to ask, didn't the Iron Wall arise after 48, 67, 73, Oslo, and the Arab Peace Initiative? Yonatan continued and said, if we look, we will find that, quote, Israel is an established fact, and therefore war does not bring more security and it does not protect us. It only brings death and destruction and increasing and ongoing security risks. By insisting that we Judaize the area between the Jordan River and the sea in everyday language, what we call the occupation, we're fostering and fueling Palestinian resistance movement and the fundamental culture of death on both sides, and we are perpetuating the conflict. Yonatan continued criticizing the Zionist project, and he said, people say that if Hamas would just lay down their weapons, the current war would end. That may be true, but the Palestinian Authority would say, which put down the weapons long ago, and what have they been left with but the occupation? If we want to prevent soldiers from falling in battle, to ensure that communities near the borders rebuild and prosper, to ensure Israelis and Jerusalem stop experiencing terror attacks, and then all the hostages return, the Palestinians need to have a horizon. They need to at least receive a signal that when they do lay down their weapons, the blockade will end, the checkpoints and the bombardments will be replaced by dialogue. We need to realize that the Iron Wall already exists, and if we continue to act in the same way we have been, it will bring collapse. If we want a future here, we have to make the conflict a thing of the past. We have to stop the tactics of divide and conquer and oppression and settlement expansion. We need to adopt the humility of victors and together with Palestinians and other countries, formulate a peace agreement that acknowledges injustices and creates a sustainable solution for two peoples, security for Israel within defined borders, and liberty, sovereignty, and a contiguous territory for Palestinians. I needn't be the one to formulate the solution, but I'd be glad to take part. I need my political leaders to invest. Itzhak Rabin was thought of by Palestinians as the breaker of bones. And Yasser Arafat was known as the arch terrorist, and they were able to recognize one another's existence on the national level. This happened because they underwent a conceptual change. Menachem Begin told Anwar Sadat that war is avoidable, but peace is unavoidable. So where have all the good men and women gone, the leaders who will finally save us from the agonies of war? Yonatan Zagan, the son of Vivian Silver's social worker, after October 7th, he decided to devote himself to being a peace activist. And his invitation to me sounds similar to the things that I've been learning about Brother Andrew. Only the gospel of love can answer the stalemate of the Middle East conflict. So my hope and prayer, might we play our part in doing what we can to avoid war and to pursue peace. Might we overcome hatred with love. Might we overcome violence with hospitality. Might we demand a better way of ourselves and of our governments, that our nation here in the United States would no longer be complicit, but that we would advocate for a negotiated settlement and peaceful solutions. We must not give up hope. We must not give up pursuing hope for a future for Palestinians where they can be free and Israelis can have safety and security, and all in the Middle East and the world might have peace.